Uh, there we go. So we have Forrest Clausen, Synod Executive. We have Michael Wilson, who is the Synod Stated Clerk. And we have Martis LaCroix, who is the pastor at College Hill Presbyterian Church. And I am Rhonda Cruzy, the transitional Presbyterian leader. So thanks for joining us. We are trying to gather as much information as we can before we jump with both feet into the merger process. And we thought it would be important to have input from our colleagues at the Synod to, just get your thoughts on the process and all of that. So I had sent you some questions and some documents to look at, and I know it was a lot to send on the afternoon before, but anyway, so one of the first things we want to know is, Forrest, you were at the November meeting, and we were really glad that you were there to listen in and be part of the, well, not part of, but be a witness to the vote and the conversation that was had. So what were your general impressions? And did you hear anything that concerned you, or?
No, actually, what I heard was greater receptivity on the part of the body than I expected, given what you had primed me for. I'm trying to remember now. There was sort of one point of friction regarding like a CRE or something like that. And I can't remember if that was related to the merger or if that was related to wanting an item on an agenda for the meeting itself that was denied, and it was unrelated to the merger. It was just part of the business of the day.
But we know what you're talking about, and it was unrelated. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, I was expecting more Q&A at a minimum. And actually, I think I did sense from the presenters an anticipation of more resistance, even in the way the presentation was put together. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got a ready group. And the biggest advice then, as far as number 3 is concerned, is just keep them up to date all the way along. I mean, overdo it a little bit, but think about a PNC working with the congregation. You know, you're not telling them who the candidates are, but you're certainly every step of the way saying, this is where we are, this is what's happening. And every step of the way giving them the chance to say, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Because I do think that this kind of thing, I mean, even what you sent us for Jim or from Jim fleshes out a lot more that most people in that room, it won't have occurred to them. And the place where buy-in would break down is when suddenly they become aware of, wait a minute, we're doing away with the CPM, or whatever that kind of conversation would go like, and suddenly they're gonna care.
Right. Yeah, and it's the little things, the administrative things, the unanticipated blips that can turn into something bigger, I think. Yeah. So I sent you the merger coordinator or project manager job description. That's something that we are thinking seriously about. What are your thoughts? And would we be able to use those Synod funds to fund it?
So that part I am probably more able to answer. Michael, I'd certainly welcome your thoughts on this job description. As far
the
as
funding part, I'll let Forrest absolutely take.
yeah, it seems to fit to me. I mean, part of it is that the team that is advising me on approvals for this kind of stuff hasn't narrowed down all of the, yeah, what's in and what's out kind of thing, which things are genuinely imaginative and which things are rearranging deck chairs. But this seems to me to be kind of for two presbyteries, priming them. I mean, it's an effort to make them viable into the next 10 years of their lives. And that fits in my mind. Now, the thought that comes to mind with $60,000 is once you've paid for perks and all of that kind of stuff, that's not a very big salary.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm thinking that would be the salary or most of it, and then the presbyteries would have to split the rest of the package.
Right.
Okay, that would help.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and just so those who are watching later, we're talking about the future proofing funds that have become available through the Synod to help presbyteries consider imaginative ways to move into the future, and so $30,000 per presbytery will be made available. And so our question is, could we combine those and use the 60,000 to fund this merger coordinator, or at least part of the package? So good. Well, that's good news.
Great. So for me, yeah, and I think Forrest is working with the team on the funding side of that. I think for me, maybe for my first words to anybody who watches this, I think good for you all for thinking about the future and for getting out ahead of stuff. And we know it's a lot of work, and we want to be here to support you through this. You'll have a number of transitions that go on over the next couple of years, and I just think you're going to discover a lot about yourselves and about what this looks like. This is the first merger of presbyteries in this synod in the recent past. I mean, if we go back long enough, we find stuff, but just in terms of, I would say, people knowing how to do this. We don't have people around who go, oh, when we did this 10 years ago, or even, oh, when we did this 15 years ago. So you all are breaking new ground for us. And I think that's probably just good for you all and for your leaders to know. And for other people to know too, I'm the stated clerk of Donegal Presbytery as well, 3/4 time there, 1/4 time with the Synod. So we'll be alongside of you and with you as you do this. I think having a person who's going to be able to focus on this is a great idea. It's a big enough task that having somebody who's like, yep, this is what I'm doing. And with Forrest, I suspect it'll be the unknown unknowns that come and bite us, right? I mean, like and I don't know that there's a way to know those things. We'll discover them when we discover them. In terms of a couple of comments about the job description, I noticed that the terms say it's a full-time contract position for 1 year. And so, but the timeline goes beyond 2024. So I just didn't know if you were anticipating that this person's going to do this job because it's the middle of 2026, right? When the General Assembly would take a vote. So maybe, I mean, it seemed to me like there's at least 2 years worth of work to do here, if not more than that. So that's, I think, it's something that came up to me, I would say, as I looked at it. Another piece, and I'll just go ahead and say it here, although I can come back to it later too, is it seems like you all are tracking on this. On the official side, this will take approval by the Synod and also by the General Assembly, right? So we'll just have to work on our timings in terms of when there's the votes. The Synod Assembly meets in person once a year in October. So if you all wanted to do an in-person presentation to the Synod, we just don't have that many opportunities for that to happen. The Synod does have some facility in meeting online via Zoom with the commissioners, and I, this would be a call of the moderators, not of Forrest or me, whether to have a special meeting for something like this. It's certainly, I'll say it like Forrest said about the funding. It fits that kind of category, right? We don't want to overpromise stuff, but it does seem to fit the kind of thing. I don't know whether the moderators would call a special in-person meeting for something like this, but you all could ask, right? If you felt like it to that. If not, end of October roughly is when the Synod generally meets in person, and would be available for stuff. So for this person to be, be aware of things like that. Two other things just while
Can I jump in?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Forrest. Yeah.
One of the things that I've begun to learn in this role is in terms of when does something need to be ready so that it can get to the Synod end of October. I would say we need it by mid to late August, because it needs to route through the governing commission on its way to the Synod Assembly. So that would apply in either 24 or 25 or both.
Yep. Yeah. Well
okay.
Said.
Back to you.
Yeah, and we're on the job description, but I'm probably a little off track here, but it probably maybe could make it one block for somebody to watch. In terms of stuff like that, oh gosh, there was something else in my head, but it skittered out of my head. Well, it'll come back. So yeah.
And that's because I interrupted. Sorry, Michael.
No, Forrest, that's fine. I could have said it first. Go ahead, Rhonda.
Is it possible to get an approval in principle without all the details?
You want me to take a first shot at that, or are you organizing your responses?
I'm organizing my responses. It would depend on what you're asking. I mean, there's not going to be able to be an approval that people can have made promises they can't unmake. Does that make sense? Like at the end of the day, it is going to come down to a vote at some point. Oh, that reminds me what I was thinking of. So I think that you all are going to be helped. If people don't know this, the office, and this is, I know Rhonda knows, this is more Matt, for you if you don't know it, and for others if they're watching this, the Office of the General Assembly is working on clarity around geographical boundaries for presbyteries and working on an actual map. And so that is going to be your friend when it comes to an official motion that says, this is the new presbytery and its geographical boundaries. And actually, what I would anticipate is that piece of it will not be that much work because it's being done right now by the Office of the General Assembly. And actually, your presbyteries may see some overtures that say, here's our boundaries. Yes, let's all make this official. And we're trying to get that stuff in order to get it to the General Assembly. So I think in terms of that, that'll be your friend. And then, and Rhonda noted this in one of these documents, there is some thinking that there may be a commission appointed by this General Assembly to have the power to combine presbyteries. And that could expedite your process. Again, we can't make any promises until the General Assembly actually appoints a commission like that. But this is happening enough places that people are aware that every 2 years, Ryan, this kind of gets to what you're saying, kind of to wait on pins and needles and say, well, we want to plan, but we can't officially plan, and we'd like to do stuff together, but we can't really do it until the General Assembly meets. And I mean, it could be a year, right? Or it could be, it is a lot for people. So there is something ahead about that kind of thing.
Let me, so Michael has given the appropriate hedge.
Yeah.
As far as an agreement in principle. And it does not, anything that the assembly would do that's not actually approving the details doesn't count in the same way that it would, like when two CEOs of a business shake hands and say, okay, now it's just a matter of legal. It really is more like the legislative process where it's not done until it's done. I think what I would be willing to say is we could think about the 2024 presentation and approval at Assembly as a strong first reading, in the sense of it being more than just, well, here's what we're doing, go think about it for a year and come back and vote. But instead it would be, here's what we're thinking, what do you think in reply? If you, as you're looking at this now, what would need to change in order for you to be willing to vote yes? What could come up that would suddenly make you unwilling to vote yes? And sort of try to address as many trip hazards in the road as possible so that the team has the chance to work on those over the next year, so that when the actual thing in detail comes before the Synod in 25, it's all but a given that it's going to pass.
Yeah.
Does that, am I overstepping anything, Mr. State Clerk?
No, I think that works well.
Rhonda, does that approach meet with what you're thinking of when you're thinking of an approval in principle?
Yeah, I mean, we would provide as much information as we have, as much detail as we have as to what has been accomplished, and a timeline over, saying this is what we're going to do over the next year to fill in the gaps of details, and present that, and say, what do you have any concerns? Do you have what questions do you have? This is the direction we're heading, though, and we will be back to you in a year with the final document that has been approved by both presbyteries.
We could certainly, I could see us taking a vote at the 2024 Synod Assembly that approves moving forward. I mean, they could take a vote like that, and that puts a stamp on saying, yep, we've seen it. We kind of approve where it is now. The caveat, as far as heard me making, is that it's just that if you show up at the 2025 agenda, 2025 Synod Assembly, that you can't, no one can say, well, the last people said we could move forward, you got to vote yes. I mean, it's just right. That's kind of where we're more legislative than anything else. So, yeah.
Well, that's where we are with the presbyteries.
Right.
We have been given a blessing to move forward, putting a plan together, but that in no way approves the merger. So, so you would need, what would come before the assembly in October by mid-August? Okay.
We wouldn't need a final report by then, is what I would say, for us, and maybe we can have a little conversation here in front of them about this. What we would need is the block of time that you are asking for and some information that helps us work with the moderators. But I'm saying like a final PowerPoint. What I'm saying is like the final PowerPoint
Yeah,
doesn't need to
right,
be done by
right,
then.
right.
But
A request
enough,
to be part of the docket.
right, right. And clarity about what that means and how much time it would be. And we do have a governing council commission meeting in September, and they'll want more information than that by September. So again, maybe not at final PowerPoint presentation, but at written report level at that point.
And enough, I would encourage there to be enough in that presentation that GC, Governing Commission, is able to endorse the idea to the Synod Assembly, even though they don't really have to approve, or, you know, they don't have any of that kind of power relative to what the Assembly is doing. But if you got their thumbs up and they have enough in front of them so that they can comfortably do that, that's going to move it along.
And they're a block of your assembly commissioners. So, so you're kind of getting more it paces it into buy-in for the entire assembly. You'll have people that even as you present say, oh, I've heard this, I know what's going on, I'm confident that I can vote on it, things like that.
Okay. Okay. That helps. One of the people that was being interviewed, and I just watched the video, was oh, his name just went out of my brain. Carl Wilton. And because he was very involved in the New Jersey reconfiguration. And he said that one of the things that they did fairly early on was to go to the Synod legal counsel and find out what information they were going to need, and involve them sooner rather than later. So I'm just, because we will have our council, we're going to meet with them soon, the council for both presbyteries, to say, this is coming. How do we want to work this? But I also think it's a good idea to maybe give the Synod council a heads up as well.
Yeah.
And see what they need.
I will just consider that in addition to my to-do list. If you want, I'll draft up an email to the lawyer and send it to you all first to make sure that what I'm asking is what you feel like needs to be asked, and then send it off. And I could even send it off with all of you carboned on it so that the response, everybody gets to see it. But I wouldn't want to end up having two conversations with the meter running when I find out that what I asked you, what I asked them was like, no, that's not what we need to know.
That's not what we wanted to know. We need to know this. Yeah.
Those can be very expensive mistakes.
Yeah. Yes. I'm learning that at the presbytery level as well. Okay. Yeah, we don't even know what they would need to know. I mean, they would need the boundaries, the exact legal boundaries would be one of them. I don't understand what the Synod council's role would be exactly, except to endorse I have no idea. So,
and we may need to file an amendment to our articles of incorporation if they've got boundaries, but that's not your job. I mean, it's good for us to be on top of it, so we're not blindsided by it.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll know more that I don't know. Could always possible.
Okay. So the merger team, we're planning to put together a merger team of leaders from both presbyteries. And so we just wanted to get your thoughts on what that might look like, and what, how many, what their authority might be. Do they need to be elected? If they're obviously, if they're given authority, they would need to be elected. And how are we going to, we the two presbyteries in our merger work, going to connect with the synod? Who's going to be the point person on our end and on your end?
So as far as number is concerned, I found myself initially saying 6 to 8, and then I found myself thinking that seems large. I think it depends on how many people within the two presbyteries have the capacity to really work this thing and stay through it for basically 2.5 years. I could imagine if they are trusted and representative enough that you could have as few as 2 from each presbytery. But they would need to be okay. The impression of the kind of person that comes to mind for me, given the little exposure that I've had, is they would need to be kind of the Stephen Emick of the presbytery. Somebody who's got a long history and a lot of trust, but also has not become identified with fussy. And I can imagine then that if 2 from each presbytery are like that, that you could probably get the job done.
Right, because there would also be, in theory, the coordinator.
Right.
Who you're anticipating does quite a bit of the legwork.
Right.
Yeah. I suppose you all have talked about this, and I mean, I heard Forrest saying kind of 2 from each presbytery. I would make this an even numbered team with people from the same number of people from both presbyteries. Like I don't tend to carry the anxiety that some people do into like PNCs, like, oh, PNC's got to be an odd number in case there's a vote. I always think to myself, if a PNC wanted to call me and it was 5-4, I don't want to go. Like, so you know what I mean? Like, there's other things going on. If this group is 2-2 about something, like, do you wish there was a third person to break the tie? I don't. I wish that they figured out something that worked for all of them. Is you're aiming for, I think, that level. So it looks like you all are ahead of that.
Okay.
I maybe this will help in terms of the size. Do you anticipate other people besides the merger coordinator? Like, are the stated clerks going to be involved with this? I mean, Rhonda, you're around now, like what's other staff's relationship to this group going to be? And the more other people are involved, probably the fewer people you need, or kind of volunteers you need.
That's a good question. Our clerks are both part-time.
Right.
And seem to have their plates pretty full of just day-to-day business of the presbytery, as do I, and as will my successor. So that's part of the reason why the coordinator position would be helpful to pick up this piece so that it allows the clerks and the general presbyter to do all the other stuff that they normally do. So I anticipate the clerks being in a support role, but not,
but not regularly at meetings, kind of on call as they're needed. Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
I mean, that's me. I don't know what others.
Right.
Matt, does that make sense to
That
you?
sounds right to me. I don't think that they've got the bandwidth, nor the whole point of the project coordinator position is to keep their plates clear of this, and so lean into that.
Yep. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and as I consider that question about authority that the team would be given, I think that's not exactly worded correctly. Because they would bring everything back to the councils. I mean, the
I would
admin
not give
board
them
and
any
LT.
commission power.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So that question was
Yeah.
not worded well.
They may need a budget. I mean, so in some, some permission from each presbytery to, if there's travel involved, if Jim's going to continue to be, a resource person or a consultant that they work with. I mean, so they might need some resources that way, but I concur. This is a group that's bringing everything back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 And again, if they're working with lawyers, right? So budget may be a thing that if each presbytery puts something in for them to work with, they'll probably appreciate that, and not constantly going back and saying, oh, we need to get the lawyer to do this. Can we have money?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, it's hard to budget for legal fees, I have found.
Yes.
Yep. They tend to grow exponentially when you don't even realize it. So
Yes, they do.
So are the two of you our primary points of connection around this?
Yeah. I don't see anybody else in the Synod system that would be, I mean, that'll be valuable, yes, but that will be a point person, no. I
Okay.
think all of the technicalities will fall to Michael. Well, okay, let me back that one up, actually. I have some assumptions, but those are built partly on my previous job description, which was bigger than just being a stated clerk, and it's probably more like what Michael's role in Donegal is. It may be that Michael handles the ecclesiastical stuff, but for instance, I'll be responsible for the legal stuff.
Yeah.
Given that, and we're still working out the division of labor between the two of us anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I think send everything to both of us and we'll figure out who's gonna tackle it.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
And so then that kind of takes me back to the question that you have of number 3, Rhonda. Might this team be the primary point of connection for the Synod? I think the question I've got there is as opposed to what?
Well, I guess what I want to clarify on our end is who is going to be the person or persons who connect with Synod folks, because I don't think it would be helpful to have 5 different people sending you emails asking you questions. So I mean, it needs to be somebody on that team or maybe the coordinator. I mean, so that wasn't necessarily a question for you as a question for us to make sure that we have one person who's, working with the Synod.
I would
And
say
maybe
I would
one-
guess it's this coordinator, or if this team elects co-chairs.
Right.
This could be the type of team. I mean, this is unusual, but it happens sometimes. I mean, the merger coordinator could chair this team too, right? I mean, and just like that would be clear about kind of like really who's taking this ball forward. Again, I don't even, that's out loud thinking, not, I wouldn't even put that to the category of suggestion, just kind of like.
No, I get it. Okay. What else would you like us to know or keep in mind, or
So, I think that, and maybe I didn't read the legal stuff carefully enough, or maybe it just intentionally wasn't detailed out as much. I think that bylaws and other governing documents are going to be an important piece of this at some point. Bylaws probably legally, but I think also, like, when you're talking about what do you do about COM, CPM, and some of those kind of functional entities, the standing rules or an admin ops or whatever governing document you all use, that's probably going to be pretty critical to a Synod vote in 25, because the Synod will be voting on this particular thing, and they'll need something to understand what the particular thing is.
Right.
I think they could be able to approve bylaws that have the geographic definition of the entity, say the number of churches and sort of what it's for, and that would be the bare bones. But I think one of the questions in here that is worth answering is, when do you pin down how this is going to happen? I mean, not how are you going to get there, but when you're there and things are happening, what does that look like? And do you define all that before the approval, or do you kind of get together and then start figuring it out afterwards? I think that is going to need to be kind of an early conversation on the part of the prep team. I've seen instances where it was a really good idea that all of, sort of, if two congregations are choosing to worship at the same plant, that they figured it out ahead of time, which congregation worshipped at 9:30 and which congregation worshipped at 11, right? Because if they hadn't figured that out ahead of time, everything would have collapsed.
right.
So that's a thought that I've got on that. The lawyers will want to be involved with the bylaws, I'm sure. The other thought that I had as we were talking, I don't think it's in the job description, and maybe it doesn't need to be in the job description, but it occurred to me that this person could end up, if they do the job really well, being regarded as a shortlister for Rhonda's replacement. And then the question is that okay?
Yeah, somebody's already asked me about that already.
Yeah.
I imagine that the prospect of that would make more people willing to take it on.
And there's a couple of ways to handle that. I mean, the position could be declared ineligible to apply, you could say up front, this person's going to be eligible to apply, or you could say the search committee is going to get to decide whether the person's eligible to apply. I mean, like or the council or kind of whoever, give that.
Right.
And all those things are doable.
Right.
Yeah.
It should be named though. I mean,
But
it should be considered and named up front so that there's not confusion and hard feelings.
Hey, this might be a question for our various attorneys. It just, first, as you were talking, it occurred to me, we'll have to figure out who approves what and what actually gets approved. Like, I'm not actually sure that I will think that the Synod ought to approve the bylaws, because you don't want to have the Synod approve changes in the bylaws. So, I mean, the Synod may approve these, and we can write this carefully, the Synod may approve these as the starting bylaws with the understanding they don't approve them again in the future. I mean, like, we'll need to figure that stuff out so we don't create issues in the future, that or don't exist for other entities. I don't think if Northumberland Presbytery goes to change their bylaws, they necessarily bring it to the Synod, right? That thing. But
we don't want the Synod messing around with our bylaws.
Right.
Yeah. It also occurred to me, your people might be helped. There's a pretty extensive section in Robert's Rules of Orders about starting an organization. I mean, in some sense, you all are forming a new corporation here, right? I mean, it's coming out of two other corporations. So there's some stuff there about what they recommend in terms of bylaws and other documents that are necessary, which attorneys will have opinions about as well. Good opinions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that there could be a really important difference between what happens legally and what happens socially.
Right.
It might be actually that Lackawanna dissolves and is absorbed by Lehigh legally. But then it would become the Presbytery of Lehigh doing business as the Presbytery of we're better than we ever were before.
Yeah. There's usually, and I can't remember what in the document that I got from Corey Schlosser Hall, it was called something. One presbytery wasn't absorbing, it was I don't know.
Right, or whether you're dissolving or ending two corporations, starting a new corporation, we'll leave that up to attorneys. But like you said, Forrest, the legal stuff could be described differently than the social stuff.
Right. Because I think often they do that. They keep one corporation and just dissolve one rather than dissolving them both.
In California, it was called merge into.
Yeah. So anyway.
Alas, as we're kind of like just brainstorming a little bit here, and I would assume you all have done this, but already at least a little bit. More broadly, we've got some colleagues that have had some experience doing this, which is over in New Jersey, right, where a number of kind of things have happened. So I'm not connected there enough to know which of those stories would be helpful or unhelpful for your people, but there certainly are things that have happened there that I think could be lessons for you all.
Yeah. The words I was thinking of is, and this was in the state of Washington, one was called the Disappearing Corporation and Presbytery, and the other one was called the Surviving Corporation and Presbytery.
So that, just the obvious, that becomes a bit of a political problem.
Yes.
Because it has to be interpreted. Yeah.
Yes. Who wants to be the disappearing
The
presbyterian?
devouring presbytery and the devoured
Yes.
presbytery. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this might be, I mean, you're speaking for myself. If an attorney said to me, oh, and I'm just picking numbers here, it's $5,000 to have a disappearing presbytery and a surviving presbytery, and it's $7,500 to dissolve two corporations and start a new one, I might say $7,500 is going to be worth a lot more in 10 years when some church isn't going, well, we were the ones that got swallowed up. Just, I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what's easiest for them may not be what's best for the future.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I don't want to keep you too long, but we value your wisdom.
Well, the one question I see that we hadn't talked about is are good candidates. And so just to help me, like, where are you in the process? If we think of people, is there a search committee, like?
No, we have a job description, but neither council has approved this was something that the leadership, moderator, vice moderator, and several other people sort of came up with and agreed to go ahead and get Jim Kitchens to help us develop the job description. That now is going to be taken to the two councils. It was helpful to know about the potential funding because that will be a part of the conversation. So this Wednesday, Lehigh's meets, and next Tuesday, Lackawanna's meets. And so if we get buy-in or approval from both of those councils, then we can move forward in searching. So within a week, hopefully.
Great. Okay.
Or a week and a couple days. And you're right. A conversation will need to be had about whether this person could then apply for my successor. And that needs to bring in the PNC into that conversation. So, yeah.
So,
but in the meantime, if you think of anybody,
the only name that comes to mind, and she would not be willing to do anything more than a year or something like that, but she might have connections for you to other folks. Patrice Hatley was the former GP at Tampa Bay Presbytery. She was some kind of director level manager at AT&T for her career, and then became a presbytery leader after she retired. So she's got the sort of the chops of knowing how to handle the business side of presbytery leadership. She was the chair of the AC that sorted out Synod of the Covenant and its mess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and did a great job with it. So it may be that in the course of all of that, she came across somebody that when you kind of lay out, this is the sort of person we're looking for, and in fact, you came to mind, but we doubt that you are going to be willing to come back in.
And move from Florida to Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but somebody might come to her mind.
Okay.
And she might be willing to come up for a week, a month. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if it turns out like she'd be a great skill set, and that's, I was wondering too, whether a recently retired person who wouldn't be then interested in, ongoing full-time position is a natural kind of like person who's like, I'm in and out, I'll get it done and then I'll hand it off. Or it could be that this is a great place for somebody to prove they love the place, can learn the stories, want to be involved in the future. I don't know which of those is better. I can in my own mind think of good and positives and challenges to each of those. hey, we had some electrical issues in our office and I see a guy just came up and I've got about 5 minutes here that if I get off this pretty soon, I can fill him in on our little challenges.
Oh, no, I think we're done.
Good.
And
And
you,
actually, if you
any-
stop the Zoom, I've got one non-recording thing for you.
Okay. Stop recording.